In this video, I'm going to show you one of the best ways to maximize your profits, batching. Stick around and check it out. All right, so if you watched my last video, you know I made these American flag home plates. Well, I made one just to kind of figure out how I'm going to do it. I built it off of plans that I made. And then I made another one and significantly cut down the time that it took me to make it, which is kind of standard. You've got it kind of figured out, you know what you're going to do, and the process is a little bit more smooth. The third round, I did 4 at once and significantly brought down my labor time so that I could maximize my profits were I to try to sell these all at once. Now, I made some of these to give away and some to sell, so I didn't really make that much money on them, but they were a lot of fun to build, and it was a good lesson in how batching and some other tips will really help the efficiency in your shop. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to maximize your efficiency when you're making multiples of something. Let's get after it. So bottom line, the number one key to success by far is to be able to run your project from beginning to end without any delays. Productivity guru Brian Tracy says that every minute you spend in planning saves 10 minutes in execution. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So tip number 1 is have a well thought out and detailed plan before you even enter the workshop. Now, my projects usually start at my computer. That's where I'll draw my initial sketches, draw the model in SketchUp, and make myself the cut list and the plans and list out all the materials I'm going to need for the project. Now, I'm a big plans in hand kind of guy. I really like to have the plans in front of me, print it out, and I can actually check off the cut list as I go to make sure I don't miss anything and I don't duplicate any cuts. But at a minimum, you need to have a cut list and a material list. But the goal is to make sure that you've planned everything out so that you're ready to go when it's time to turn on that first tool. All right, tip number 2 is to make sure that all of your tools are set up before you start your project. Is your miter saw set to 90 degrees? Does your table saw have the right blade in it, and is it set to 90 degrees? Is your router table set up? Does it have the right bit in it, and is it ready to go? Basically, what you're trying to do is go from tool to tool to tool without having to make any adjustments. And speaking of equipment setup, here's a bonus tip for you. If you have more than one of a particular tool, then use that to your advantage. For example, in this router, I have a roundover bit. In this router, I have a flush trim bit. And in the router table, I have a chamfering bit. Now, I didn't need all those bits for this particular job, but if you find yourself in a project where you need multiple bits, this tip will help prevent you from having to change them out over and over again. All right, tip number 3 is to make sure that you have story sticks, jigs, and templates all ready to go before you start your project. So story sticks are huge. If you know what dimensions you're going to need on your projects, where to drill holes, how long to make pieces, how wide to make pieces, there are literally hundreds of ways that story sticks can help you make repeatable cuts accurately and quickly and cut down time in your projects. This is one example of a story stick. It's a cutoff from one of the stripes, and it tells me exactly the width of each of the stripes so that I can quickly and accurately set my table saw fence. Gotta get shorter. Let's talk jigs and templates. Now, I bought this template a long time ago for the American flag build that I did, but I know I'm going to use these a lot, and it was actually a pack of a bunch of templates that I will probably use all of before all is said and done. When you buy or make a template, make sure it will hold up to multiple projects. This one's made out of plastic, and I just spray adhesive on the back, and then I'll put it on there, and then when I pull it off, I'll use mineral spirits to clean off the sticky, and then it's ready to go again. What you don't want to use for something like this is cardboard, because after you spray paint it enough times, it's going to get really soggy, and then the lines aren't going to be as clean. So make sure you focus on really good quality templates when you're trying to batch a bunch of things out. Now let's talk jigs. I didn't use a jig for this project, but some of your projects will need it. This is an angle cutting jig that I had to make for one of my previous projects where I had to put some angles on some table legs. So I had to build this before the project so that I could maximize my efficiency when I was batching out all the table legs. It's a really good way to make repeatable cuts Once you set it, you just put the table leg in there and run it through the table saw. So in your planning process, think about what jigs you're gonna need and then go ahead and build those before you start your project. Tip number 4 is to make sure that you have all of your materials ready. You're gonna need to think through all of the materials you're gonna need before you start your project. For this project, I needed stain for all of the colors. I needed butane in order to burn all the pieces. I needed white spray paint for the stars. I needed easy tack to be able to put the template down to spray paint the stars. Are you gonna need glue, brad nails, all those things? You gotta make sure that you have those things in stock. And don't forget, you need the right kind of glue. In this project, sometimes I used regular Tight Bond, I used CA glue, and then I used Thick and Quick by the end of the project as well. Now, when I used to be a pilot, we would do something called chair flying. You would sit at home in a chair and you would think through the flight you were about to fly. What buttons would I push? What switches would I flip? When it was time to take off, when it was time to land. You think through all of these things so that you know what you're doing ahead of time. So the same thing applies to these projects. You need to think about what materials you need, what tools you're gonna need, templates, jigs, all those things so that you can get them all ready before it's time to start your first cut. Because the last thing you want to do is make a trip to the store because you forgot something. And tip number 5 is to order your operations for maximized efficiency. Now, everything I've said up to this point is before you turn on any tool. Now it's time to start your project. So ideally, you want to make all your cuts at once. Cut all your parts to length at the miter saw, cut all your parts to width over at the table saw, and then go over to the router table and then chamfer all your pieces. You also need to optimize your workflow by minimizing delays. For example, on this project, after I cut the union, I went ahead and burned it and then stained it, then cut the rest of my parts so that when I was ready to paint on the stars, the stain was already dry. So you need to set up your order of operations to factor for time for glue and paint and stain to dry so your project doesn't stall out and you're waiting for something before you can continue. So here's another quick bonus tip for you. Glue your pieces and use brad nails or super glue to hold it together if you want the project to go quicker. You can also use Tight Bond Quick and Thick, which has about a 15-minute set time, which is about twice as fast as traditional glues. So now the moment you've been waiting for. How long did each iteration take me? So for the first one, it took me about 3.5 to 4 hours to make. On the second one, it took me about 2 hours to make, so quite a significant reduction in time, but I still could do better. On round 3, I did 4 at once, and it only took me about 2.5 hours, which is just over 30 minutes per piece. So as you can see, if you're trying to sell items online or maybe at a craft show, you can really cut down on your labor and maximize your profit per unit by making a bunch of these at once. I hope you got some useful tips from this video, and if you can think of more, go ahead and put it in the comments below and share it with the community so we can all get better. And if you want to watch how I made this project from beginning to end, go ahead and watch this video right here. That's it for this video. We'll see you next time. So as you can see, if you're trying to sell, you can maximize your labor. So as you can, I want to start laughing. So as you can see, if you're trying to sell some of these things, you can lower your, I said it again, by making a bunch of them at the top. Oh, I almost had it. My tongue got wrapped around my eye tooth and I couldn't see what I was saying.
It was this close.
I almost got it. Okay, here we go.
201.
All right, you ready? You good? Okay, here we go. It's gonna be it. By making a bunch of these at once. Yeah, let's call it.